The rain did not fall gently that morning, it crashed. It slammed against the courthouse roof like 1,000 restless hands, rattling windows, blurring the city beyond into a smear of gray and flashing red. Thunder rolled low over downtown, vibrating through marble pillars and down the polished floors, as if the building itself were bracing for what was about to unfold inside. Outside, reporters crowded the steps, umbrellas tilted like dark shields, cameras flashed, microphones hovered. Every headline had already been written in bold, screaming fonts. K9 evidence trial grips the city. Inside, the air was thicker than the storm. Jurors filed in one by one, faces pale, eyes tired from days of testimony. Some clutched coffee cups. Others twisted rings on their fingers or avoided looking toward the defense table altogether. The weight of their responsibility pressed on them like wet wool, heavy, suffocating, impossible to shrug off. At the front of the courtroom, Judge Elena Ramirez adjusted her black robe, expression carefully unreadable. She had presided over hundreds of cases, but this one felt different. The tension in the room was not just legal, it was visceral, primal, almost electric. To the left sat the prosecution team, stiff-backed, confident on the surface but uneasy beneath. They had built their case around Atlas, the highly trained police dog whose tracking had led directly to the defendant's arrest. His scent work, they said, was flawless. His record was untouchable. His handler swore under oath that Atlas never made mistakes. Across the aisle sat the defense. At their table was a man named Caleb Harris, 32, quiet, hands folded neatly in front of him. His eyes were hollow, carrying sleepless nights, grief, and disbelief that his life had spiraled into this nightmare. He sat accused of a violent crime he insisted he did not commit. Beside him sat his attorney, sharp, composed, but clearly fighting uphill. The entire case hinged on one thing, the dog's word against a man's life. In the gallery, families filled the wooden benches, some there for justice, some for closure, some simply to witness what felt like history in the making. Whispers fluttered like moths in a jar. Then there was Maya. 3 years old, yellow rain boots dangling off the bench, heels not quite reaching the floor. Her small body was wrapped in a pink jacket that swallowed her frame. Her dark curls bounced as she shifted, clutching a worn purple crayon in one hand and a folded paper drawing in the other. She didn't look afraid. She looked observant. Too observant. Her mother, Lena Brooks, sat beside her, gripping her tightly. Lena's eyes were red from crying, not just today, but from months of sleepless nights. Caleb was her brother, Maya's uncle, and the possibility that he could be sent away for decades had torn her family apart. Every time the doors creaked, Lena flinched. Every time a gavel tapped, Maya blinked but did not look away. Then the moment arrived. A side door opened. The murmurs in the room cut off like someone had flipped a switch. Atlas entered. He was magnificent, a powerful German shepherd with sleek black and tan fur, muscles rippling under disciplined control. His posture was perfect, head high, ears alert, tail still. Every step echoed softly against the marble floor, nails clicking like quiet punctuation. His handler, Officer Grant Wells, walked beside him in crisp uniform, face stern, shoulders squared. To the jury, he looked steady, professional, unshakable. But beneath that calm, his pulse hammered. He felt the room watching him, measuring him, judging him, trusting him. Atlas halted near the witness stand, sitting instantly on command. His eyes scanned the courtroom with a startling intelligence, moving from the judge to the lawyers to the defendant, and finally to the gallery. That was when he saw her. Maya. Something shifted in his gaze, not fear but recognition. Not recognition of danger. Recognition of something buried. Judge Ramirez tapped her gavel lightly. Order in the court. Silence settled again, but this silence was fragile, like thin ice over deep water. The prosecution began summarizing their case, voices steady, words polished, tone certain. They spoke of footprints, sent trails, timelines, and Atlas's impeccable training. To them, this was clear-cut. A dog had tracked the suspect. Evidence matched. End of story. Yet Maya did not listen. Her eyes never left Atlas. She leaned forward slightly, boots swinging. The crayon slipped from her fingers, clattering softly to the floor, a sound so small that only a few noticed it. Her mother whispered, "Maya, sit still." But Maya didn't move. She tilted her head, studying the dog the way children sometimes study things adults overlook, patiently, deeply, without prejudice. Then Atlas did something subtle. He swallowed. His ears twitched. His tail gave the slightest tremor. For a fraction of a second, the perfectly trained police dog looked uncertain. Caleb noticed it, his chest tightened. The handler noticed it too, his jaw clenched. Then Judge Ramirez turned to the gallery. If there is any disruption, this room will be cleared immediately. Maya blinked slowly, as if absorbing the warning. Thunder cracked overhead so loud the lights flickered. The fluorescent bulbs buzzed, casting a pale shimmer across the courtroom. That was when Maya stood up. Her small boots thudded lightly against the bench as she rose, tiny hand gripping the railing in front of her. Her mother gasped and tried to pull her down. Maya, no. But Maya didn't resist. She simply stretched her arm out. Her finger extended, straight toward Atlas. The entire courtroom felt the shift before they heard her voice. Jurors leaned forward. Reporters froze mid-scribble. The prosecutor stopped mid-sentence. The handler stiffened like stone. Atlas stared directly at her now, unblinking. Then, in a soft, clear, trembling child's voice that somehow carried across the entire chamber, Maya spoke. He came to my house. The words didn't scream, they didn't cry. They simply fell, heavy, undeniable, impossible to ignore. A murmur rippled through the room. The judge frowned. Young lady, you must sit. But Maya wasn't finished. She pointed again, more firmly. At night, she continued, with a tall man and gloves. Lena froze, face draining of color. Caleb turned slowly, disbelief written across his features. The handler's breathing hitched. Atlas lowered his head. Not in obedience. In shame. The prosecutor slammed a hand lightly on the table. Your Honor, this is inappropriate. Judge Ramirez raised her gavel but did not strike it. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something deeper, curiosity mixed with dread. Maya tugged her mother's sleeve. He was scared, she whispered, now pointing not just at Atlas but at the floor where he sat. A single drop of rain slid down the courthouse window like a tear. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Inside, the temperature seemed to drop. Atlas let out a barely audible whimper. And in that instant, before anyone could react, before anyone could stop her, Maya spoke one final sentence that made every heart in the room stutter. He listened to the man, not to you. The courtroom went utterly still. The lights flickered again. And no one, not the judge, not the jurors, not the lawyers, was prepared for what would come next. The courtroom seemed to shrink in that moment, as if the marble walls themselves were leaning in to listen. Every eye was locked on Maya, the tiny girl whose words had just upended the rhythm of the trial. Officer Grant Wells' hands trembled ever so slightly. He gripped Atlas' leash harder, trying to anchor the dog's focus. But Atlas didn't move. His dark eyes were wide, fixed entirely on Maya, the way a compass needle locks onto true north. Your Honor, the prosecutor began, voice tight, brittle, as if forced through a thin tube. This is highly irregular. A child cannot. But Judge Ramirez held up a hand. Her eyes, sharp and precise, flicked between Maya and Atlas. There was something in that gaze, a silent recognition that this courtroom was no longer under the control of adults. Something primal had entered the room. Maya leaned closer to the railing, her small lips quivering slightly, whispering to no one but the dog. He wasn't supposed to come, she said. The words, soft and tremulous, landed in the minds of every adult like a sudden, cold wind. Lena's hand shot to cover her mouth. She looked at her daughter, puzzled and terrified. Maya, what are you saying? The little girl did not respond. She only pointed first at Atlas, then at Officer Wells, then at the defendant, Caleb, her tiny face creasing with an intensity no 3-year-old should possess. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Some pressed palms to their foreheads, others exchanged nervous glances. Even the bailiff, standing stiffly at the side, swallowed hard, sensing that the entire case had just shifted into unknown territory. Officer Wells tried to speak. Your Honor, he's just a child. She doesn't understand the procedures. But the words fell flat, drowned by the charged silence. Atlas whined softly, low and warning-like. He stepped forward an inch, ears pinned, tail stiff, not in aggression but in fear. Judge Ramirez cleared her throat slowly, deliberately. "We will hear the child, carefully. One word, one statement. Then we will proceed. Ms. Brooks, hold your daughter if you must, but do not interrupt her." Lena nodded, knees weak, heart hammering in her chest. She barely dared to breathe. Maya tilted her head, as if sizing up the entire courtroom in one careful sweep. Then she spoke again, her voice trembling yet clear. "The man came with gloves, and he told him to follow the smell." Whispers erupted, like sparks skittering across dry wood. "What smell?" one juror murmured under her breath. "The wrong smell," Maya continued, voice rising slightly, insistent. "Atlas didn't know. He listened to the man, not to you." The courtroom froze. The prosecutor slammed a fist lightly on the table, voice sharp now. "Objection, this is completely inadmissible. This child is." Judge Ramirez held up her gavel, silencing him instantly. "Objection noted. Let's hear her out, carefully." Maya's mother tried to hold her hand, but the child shook free. She seemed older somehow, older than 3, with a strange clarity in her eyes, the kind that made adults feel as though a child were staring not at them, but through them. Maya took a step toward Atlas. The dog's ears twitched, his gaze following her every move. The handler's face grew pale. He shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, and the leash slackened. He came to our house," Maya said, pointing insistently at Atlas. "And he whispered. He said Atlas would go the wrong way. He said I shouldn't tell." A collective intake of breath swept through the courtroom. Caleb's attorney leaned forward, voice tight. "Your Honor, what is she saying? That the dog's tracking evidence is compromised?" Judge Ramirez's eyes narrowed, focused. "Apparently." Atlas whimpered again, low and warning-like. His fur bristled along his spine. The handler swallowed audibly. Beads of sweat formed at his temple. Then Maya said something so simple yet chilling that everyone went still. "He's scared," she whispered. "The dog is scared. He didn't want to go." It was not just a statement, it was truth. The judge leaned back in her chair, considering. The jury squirmed in their seats. Caleb's chest heaved, disbelief and hope tangled together. Lena held her daughter, trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. Atlas stepped closer to Maya. He rested his muzzle lightly on her boots. The handler froze, lips parted. For a dog trained to obey, this was more than hesitation, it was defiance. The courtroom doors opened suddenly, letting in a gust of rain-scented air. Everyone turned. For a moment, it felt like the storm outside had followed them in. A bailiff approached Judge Ramirez, hand raised, whispering something in her ear. Her face went pale, her gavel trembling slightly in her grasp. "What is it?" the prosecutor demanded, panic edging into his tone. Judge Ramirez held up a hand. "It seems we have unexpected evidence that must be reviewed immediately." Maya tilted her head, curious, and pointed again. "He brought it," she said softly. The prosecutor frowned. "Who brought what?" Before anyone could answer, the courtroom felt an almost tangible weight in the air, like a storm about to break again. Atlas growled low, almost imperceptibly, and the sound made every adult in the room freeze. The judge's eyes met the handler's. In that brief look, everyone could see the panic creeping over him, the knowledge that something critical had been revealed that could unravel the entire case. Outside, sirens screamed closer. Inside, pens froze mid-note. Cameras focused, shutters clicked. The entire courtroom seemed to inhale as one. And then in a small, perfectly clear voice, that of a child, Maya said words that made everyone shiver. "He didn't follow the rules, he followed the man." The room went utterly silent. And in that silence, every adult knew the trial was no longer about Caleb. It was about the truth Atlas carried and the little girl who saw it first. The courtroom felt like it had stopped breathing. Every eye was fixed on Maya and Atlas. The dog's ears twitched, nostrils flaring as though he could smell not only fear but truth. Officer Grant Wells shifted uncomfortably, fingers tightening around the leash. For years, he had trusted Atlas implicitly. The dog had never led him astray. But now Atlas was hesitating, and that hesitation screamed louder than any testimony. Judge Ramirez exhaled slowly, trying to steady the room. "Bring in the evidence," she said. Her voice carried calm authority, but it trembled slightly at the edges. A bailiff stepped forward, carrying a sealed envelope marked urgent in bold letters. The paper felt heavier than it should have. The courtroom leaned forward collectively, as if gravity itself had drawn everyone closer. Caleb's attorney exchanged a glance with his client. The air was electric. This could be the evidence that either freed him or doomed him further. The prosecutor's jaw clenched. "Your Honor, may we see what this is before introducing it?" Judge Ramirez shook her head slowly. "No, it will be presented to the jury in due course. The room will remain silent while it is reviewed. Ms. Brooks, hold your daughter close. Everyone else, pay attention." Lena instinctively drew Maya close, whispering, "Sweetheart, it's going to be okay." Maya's eyes were wide, her small body rigid, but she did not look away from Atlas. The dog, too, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, every muscle taut, gaze locked on her. The bailiff carefully handed the envelope to Judge Ramirez, who broke the seal with deliberate precision. Inside were a series of photographs and video files from a security camera in a nearby alley. The jury leaned forward. Some jurors whispered, though the judge's gavel silenced them instantly. The first image appeared on the large screen at the front of the courtroom. It was Atlas following a scent trail in the dark, alert and precise. But beside him was a figure the courtroom hadn't expected to see, a tall man in dark leather gloves. He leaned close to Officer Wells, speaking softly. Wells' head tilted slightly, following the instructions. The video clicked to the next frame. The man handed something to Wells, an object small enough to hide but heavy with implication. Atlas hesitated, his body stiff, eyes darting between the two men. Then he followed the scent the man indicated, not the scent that the trail truly required. Murmurs erupted, quickly subdued by the judge. The jurors' faces were pale, a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension. Caleb's hands clenched into fists. He could hardly breathe. Maya pointed at the screen. "That's him," she whispered. "The man who came to our house, he told him what to do." Officer Wells' face drained of color. He looked at the floor, jaw tight, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Atlas whimpered softly, low in his throat, trembling slightly as though ashamed. The prosecutor's hands shook. This is impossible," he stammered. "The dog, the evidence it ca." Judge Ramirez lifted a hand. "Order, let's continue." The next clip played. The tall man motioned subtly, and Atlas obeyed, veering off the true trail. Wells appeared calm, professional, but there was a tension in his posture that had never been revealed in testimony. Maya's finger remained pointed at Atlas, unwavering. "She listened," a juror whispered. "The dog, he listened to the wrong person." The courtroom seemed to shrink further. Every adult felt the weight of the moment, the fragile veneer of control cracking, the law teetering on a knife's edge. Caleb's attorney spoke, voice taut with controlled urgency. "Your Honor, this is direct evidence of tampering. Atlas's tracking was influenced. The reliability of the K-9 testimony is now compromised." Judge Ramirez nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the screen. "Indeed, this changes the context of every piece of evidence presented thus far." Officer Wells' hands shook as he adjusted Atlas' leash. His mind raced. He had always believed in Atlas, believed in the integrity of the work. Now he had to face the impossible. He had been manipulated. Maya leaned closer to her mother, whispering, "He told him to do it. He told him to trick everyone." Lena's heart clenched. She glanced at Caleb, whose eyes were wide and glistening. There was hope now, but it was fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a counter. Judge Ramirez tapped the screen. "We will proceed carefully. Bailiff, secure the video evidence. All parties remain seated." The judge's eyes swept over the courtroom, lingering on Officer Wells. "Do you wish to provide a statement before we continue?" Wells' voice came out in a shaky whisper. I didn't know. I thought I was following proper protocol. His voice faltered completely as Atlas moved slightly, stepping closer to Maya, not him. The jury gasped softly. Even the prosecutor's expression softened in shock. The dog had chosen. Suddenly, the doors to the courtroom burst open, letting in a gust of wind, damp with rain. A deputy rushed in, breathless, holding another envelope. Judge Ramirez took it, glancing at its contents. Her face went pale. "This requires immediate review," she said. Her gavel hovered, unsure whether to strike or let the storm inside continue to unfold. Maya's eyes followed the envelope. She tilted her head, small fingers still pointing at Atlas. "He brought it," she said softly. "The man he didn't want anyone to see." The courtroom went utterly silent again. Every adult felt a shiver crawl up their spine. Atlas lowered his muzzle and whined softly, low in his throat, almost like a warning. Then Maya said something that caused even the most hardened reporters to lean in, breath caught in their throats. "He's not supposed to be here. He's coming." The judge's hand tightened on the gavel. Jurors sat frozen, unsure if the trial was still about evidence, or about a danger lurking just beyond the doors. Outside, sirens screamed closer, a warning and a promise. Inside, the courtroom held its collective breath. No one moved. No one dared. And in that pregnant silence, every adult knew one terrifying truth. The trial had just become far more dangerous than any of them imagined. The courtroom air felt electric, heavy with the scent of rain and tension. Every heartbeat seemed to echo against the marble walls, vibrating through polished floors, through wooden benches, through the very souls of everyone present. Judge Ramirez's gavel hovered above the bench, suspended in a fragile pause. She glanced at the bailiff, then at Officer Wells, then at the jury. Her eyes hardened. "Secure the doors. All personnel stay in their places. No one leaves until we assess this new evidence." Maya's tiny fingers were still pointed at Atlas, unwavering. The dog's ears were pricked, nostrils flaring. He moved just an inch closer to the child, tilting his head, almost as if to say she knows. Then the doors at the rear of the courtroom creaked open. A tall figure stepped through, leather gloves glistening from the rain outside, coat soaked, hat pulled low. The room collectively froze, as though the marble itself held its breath. Every adult's heart skipped a beat. Atlas stiffened instantly, every muscle taut, tail rigid, growl low in his throat. Maya did not flinch. "She came," she whispered, barely audible, eyes locked on the man. The defendant, Caleb, sat rigid in his seat, disbelief written across his face. His lawyer rose halfway, hand outstretched, mouth open, but no words came. The man's gaze swept across the courtroom slowly, deliberately, like a predator assessing territory. His eyes landed on Atlas first, then Officer Wells, then finally the small girl whose words had already upended everything. Atlas barked sharply, a sound that reverberated like a gunshot in the chamber. The handler froze, leash trembling in his hands. His face turned ashen. For the first time, the man in gloves seemed truly real to him, not just an image in video evidence. Judge Ramirez leaned forward, voice calm but unyielding. "Identify yourself." The man's lips curled into a slight, chilling smile. "I suppose introductions are overdue," he said softly, voice smooth, almost musical, but carrying an edge that made every juror flinch. "My name doesn't matter, but what matters is that the evidence you've trusted is incomplete." The prosecutor's jaw clenched. "This is contempt. You have no authority here." The man raised a gloved hand. Atlas growled again, low and warning-like. It was not aggression, but recognition. He knew this figure. He knew this figure's intentions. Maya's mother clutched her tightly, whispering, "Maya, don't." Maya tugged free slightly, pointing at Atlas. He told him to trick everyone. Atlas didn't want to." The man's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "Ah, the child sees clearly. I admire that. Most adults are blind to the patterns. Most adults follow without question." Officer Wells' hands shook violently. "Stop, you have no right." But the man ignored him, stepping further into the courtroom. Each movement was deliberate, almost theatrical. Every eye followed him. Judge Ramirez slammed her gavel, trying to regain control. "Bailiff, remove him now." The man paused, as if considering the order, then tilted his head toward Atlas. "Remove me? You can try, but the dog knows the truth." Atlas whined low, moving closer to Maya, pressing his head against her knees. The handler's face went pale. He realized the impossible. The dog had betrayed him in the only way that mattered, loyalty to innocence, not instruction. Maya whispered again, voice trembling but clear. "He's afraid, he's scared, Atlas knows." The prosecutor took a cautious step forward. "Your Honor, we cannot. This man has no authority, no right here. This is a legal proceeding, not." But Judge Ramirez raised her hand again, her eyes sharp, scanning the room like a hawk. "Everyone remain calm. This courtroom will not descend into chaos. Bailiffs, restrain him if necessary, but let's ascertain what he wants." The man's smile widened slightly. "What I want? Only the truth to be seen. The dog has carried it long enough. The evidence has been manipulated, the trail guided. I only came to correct what has been overlooked. Caleb's attorney glanced at his client, astonishment mingled with a flicker of hope. Could this stranger be the key to proving innocence? Maya's finger remained pointed at Atlas. He's the one who made Atlas follow the wrong trail, she said softly, almost accusingly. The man told him to go the wrong way. Atlas growled, low and trembling, pressing closer to the child. Officer Wells' hands shook. Realizing the truth, the dog had always obeyed, but his heart had chosen differently in the presence of the child. Suddenly, the man's gloved hand slipped into his coat pocket. The crowd tensed. The judge's voice sliced through the tension. "Step away from the table, step away." But the man only paused, hand still, gaze steady. In that moment, the courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. Maya's lips moved, whispering to Atlas. He tilted his head, whine rising slightly. Then she said, loud enough for some to hear. "He brought it, the proof. He didn't want anyone to know." The man's eyes flicked to the bailiffs, then back at Maya. His lips twitched into a near smile. Then the silence shattered. A phone-like beep emanated from his coat pocket. The man froze, eyes widening ever so slightly. He reached in, pulling out a small, black envelope, which he held up carefully, almost ceremoniously. Judge Ramirez's voice rang out. "What is that?" The man's response was calm, deliberate, chilling. "Everything you think you know is inside." Every juror leaned forward instinctively. Caleb's hands shook. Officer Wells took a step back. Atlas whined softly. And then Maya's words cut through the tension like a knife. "He's not supposed to be here, but he came anyway." The room went utterly silent. Every adult knew the trial had crossed a line, from courtroom drama into something far more dangerous, far more alive. The storm outside continued its relentless roar. Rain pounded against windows. Thunder rattled the courthouse. Inside, the stage was set. The man, the envelope, the dog, the child, and the truth they all carried had converged. And no one, not the judge, the jurors, the lawyers, or the defendant, had any idea what would happen next. The courtroom seemed to shrink under the weight of expectation. Every person present felt the storm outside mirrored the storm inside, a building trembling not from wind, but from truth on the edge of revelation. Officer Grant Wells' hands were shaking so violently that the leash slipped slightly in his grip. Atlas, meanwhile, did not move from Maya's side. The dog's head rested lightly on her boots, ears pressed flat in a silent signal of fear and recognition. The man in gloves held the black envelope carefully, as if it were made of glass. He turned toward Judge Ramirez. "This," he said, voice steady, "is what the evidence should have shown." The judge leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Explain." The man opened the envelope slowly. Inside were photographs, documents, and a USB drive. He placed them carefully on the table, glancing at Wells. "These prove the chain of events you have been told is unbroken, is in fact compromised. Atlas's tracking was guided. He did not follow the scent naturally. He was instructed." A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. Jurors leaned forward, eyes wide. Caleb's lawyer raised his eyebrows, heart hammering. Caleb's hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Officer Wells' lips trembled. I can explain," his voice faltered. His reputation, his career, and his conscience all hung on the precipice. Maya pointed at Atlas, then at Wells. He listened to the man, not to the trail, not to the right way. Wells swallowed hard. "It's true. His voice broke. Atlas let out a low, trembling whine. The dog's gaze remained fixed on Maya, unwavering in loyalty to innocence rather than instruction. The prosecutor slammed a hand on the table. "This is impossible. How can a dog choose? How can?" Judge Ramirez held up her hand. "Order, let him speak." Wells swallowed again, voice low, almost pleading. "I was approached. I was bribed, not with money, with fear. Threats to my career, threats to my family. Atlas was instructed to track, to follow the scent in a particular way, to confirm something that wasn't true. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was wrong." The courtroom was silent. Every eye was on him. Some jurors were pale, some shook their heads in disbelief. Caleb slumped slightly in relief, hope sparking where despair had lived. Maya's small voice cut through the tension, insistent. "Atlas didn't want to. He did. He was scared. He didn't know. He wanted to do right." Atlas pressed closer, whining softly, tail stiff but wagging slightly, as if agreeing. The man in gloves nodded. See, even the dog knew, even the trained officer knew. The child sees clearly because the truth has a way of finding its way into the smallest hearts. The defense attorney's hands shook slightly as he took in the evidence. Your Honor, this completely undermines the prosecution's case. Atlas's tracking was manipulated. The evidence is unreliable. The entire trial, he trailed off, unable to articulate the full enormity of the revelation. Judge Ramirez tapped the bench, processing. Bailiff, secure all physical evidence. Let the jury review it carefully. Officer Wells, remain seated. Do not leave the courtroom. Your testimony is now central. Wells sank into his chair, eyes wide, head shaking. Atlas pressed closer to Maya, resting his head on her lap. His growl subsided, replaced by a low, trembling whine, almost a sigh of relief. The man in gloves pulled a photograph from the envelope, holding it up. It was from the night in question. Wells was standing beside Atlas, whispering commands, while a shadowy figure, the tall man himself, guided the dog with subtle signals. The photograph captured every nuance. Atlas's body language clearly showed hesitation, confusion, and obedience to the wrong person. Maya pointed at the image. That's him, that's the man, that's what I saw. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Jurors whispered frantically. The prosecution's face had drained of color. They were suddenly on the defensive, realizing the foundation of their case was crumbling before their eyes. Judge Ramirez slammed her gavel lightly. Everyone calm down. The jury will review the evidence in silence. But the tension refused to settle. Every adult in the room could feel it. Even the air seemed charged. The storm outside rattled the windows as though echoing the chaos unfolding within. Caleb's hands shook with emotion. Relief warred with disbelief. He had spent months fearing the worst, only to discover that innocence had a voice, and it had come from a 3-year-old girl and a loyal dog who refused to lie. Maya whispered to her mother, "He didn't want to hurt anyone, the dog didn't." Lena hugged her daughter tightly. "I know, baby, I know." The man in gloves glanced at the judge. "The final piece," he said, voice low, almost ominous. "The true evidence is elsewhere. It's already in motion. If the court acts swiftly, the rest can be recovered. But there is no time." Judge Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, the courtroom doors burst open again. A deputy ran in, holding another envelope, eyes wide with urgency. He shouted, "Your Honor, you need to see this. It's the last part of the evidence." All eyes turned. Atlas growled softly, tense, every hair along his back standing. Maya's eyes widened. She whispered one word. "Now." And in that instant, every adult in the room felt the world tilt slightly, as if the next revelation would not just change the trial, but shatter their understanding of the events entirely. The storm outside roared. Thunder rattled the windows. The courtroom was poised on the edge of revelation. And everyone knew the trial was about to explode in ways no one had expected. The courtroom seemed suspended in a fragile bubble. Every eye was locked on the deputy who burst through the rear doors, clutching the new envelope as if it were the last lifeline in a stormy sea. Judge Ramirez reached for it, hands steady but pulse quickened. She broke the seal carefully, pulling out a USB drive, a small handwritten note, and several photographs. The note bore a single chilling line: "The truth can't hide forever. Follow the dog." The jurors leaned forward, every muscle taut. Caleb's hands clenched the edge of the table. Officer Wells' face drained of color. Atlas stiffened, head up, ears twitching, tail rigid. Maya whispered almost inaudibly, "He brought it, the man I saw." The tall man in gloves, standing near the entrance, gave a faint smile. "Yes, the missing evidence, the last piece that proves what you've suspected yet were not allowed to see." Judge Ramirez inserted the USB drive into a laptop on the evidence table. The screen flickered to life, revealing grainy footage from the night in question. Every juror squinted, leaning forward. The camera had captured the alley behind Caleb's apartment, dimly lit by a flickering street lamp. Atlas appeared first, sniffing the ground, alert but hesitant. Beside him was Officer Wells, whispering commands, attempting to guide the dog. Then the tall man appeared, his silhouette unmistakable. He handed Wells a small object indistinguishable in the dark and whispered instructions. The camera angle shifted slightly, revealing Atlas's hesitation. His body tensed, ears back, tail stiff. The dog's eyes darted between Wells and the tall man. Then Atlas paused entirely, lowering his head in a subtle refusal. Maya's finger went rigid, pointing at the screen. "That's it, he made Atlas do the wrong thing," she cried. The courtroom murmured in disbelief. Judge Ramirez gestured for silence. The footage continued. The tall man's movements were deliberate, almost theatrical, signaling Wells. Atlas obeyed partially, but his body language betrayed him. Confusion, tension, fear. The defense attorney spoke, voice shaking. "Your Honor, this proves tampering. Atlas's tracking was influenced, controlled by the man, not by nature. The dog hesitated because the instructions were manipulated. This invalidates all K-9 evidence presented." The prosecutor rose, face pale. "This cannot be, this is impossible. A trained dog obeys orders." But Atlas whined, low and trembling, pressing closer to Maya, as if to emphasize the truth she had already stated. Wells sank in his chair, silent. Every word of the prosecution now rang hollow. Maya looked up at the tall man, eyes wide and unwavering. "He didn't follow the rules," she whispered. "He followed the man." The man in gloves nodded slowly. "Correct. The dog followed the instructions given by a manipulator, not the natural trail. Yet the truth has a witness who cannot be silenced, a child and a dog who refused to betray it." A sudden tension gripped the room. The doors at the rear burst open again. More deputies arrived, their expressions urgent. One held another envelope, larger this time. He shouted, "Judge, there's more. This corroborates everything you're seeing on the video." Judge Ramirez's eyes narrowed. She gestured to the bailiffs. "Secure the evidence. Let us review it immediately." Atlas growled softly, low in his throat, a warning. His body was taut, ready to act. Every adult in the room felt a shiver. Even the jurors leaned slightly away, instinctively sensing the dog's alertness. Maya whispered to her mother, "He's coming closer, he's scared too. Atlas knows." Outside, thunder rattled violently against the windows. Rain streaked the glass like silver knives. The courtroom felt claustrophobic, every heartbeat amplified. The tall man moved slightly, shifting his weight. Atlas stiffened further, ears back, a low growl building. Wells' hands shook, gripping the leash so hard that it cut into his palm. Judge Ramirez held up her hand, silencing the murmurs. Everyone remained seated. Officer Wells calmed the dog. "Bailiffs, stand ready. And Mr. Harris," she said, looking at Caleb, "brace yourself for the final evidence." Caleb swallowed, fear and hope warring in his chest. He had never imagined this trial could turn like this, or that a 3-year-old and a dog could expose a conspiracy that threatened his freedom. The man in gloves stepped closer to the table, carefully holding out the envelope. "This contains the final verification, timestamps, locations, and corroborating photos that prove the manipulation." Atlas whined again, low and insistent. His gaze never left Maya. The child, understanding him perfectly, whispered softly, "It's okay, tell the truth." Wells exhaled shakily, letting the tension in his shoulders ease slightly as Atlas stayed by Maya. The dog's loyalty, unwavering, had guided everyone to the truth. Judge Ramirez took the envelope. As she opened it, the room held its collective breath. Maya's small voice cut through, trembling but firm. "Now you'll see." And in that moment, as the photographs and documents were revealed, a hush fell over the courtroom. Every adult realized the trial was no longer about law alone. It was about justice, instinct, and the courage of those too small to be ignored. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside, the tension reached its peak. And everyone knew one terrifying truth. The next few minutes would decide lives, loyalty, and the final verdict of a dog, a child, and the men who had tried to manipulate both. The courtroom was a taut wire of tension, every person frozen in anticipation. The storm outside hammered the windows, rattling glass and echoing like gunfire, while inside the air felt thick enough to taste. Atlas pressed closer to Maya, low growls vibrating from his chest. His ears flattened, tail stiff, muscles coiled. He was not aggressive but alert, sensing the danger that no adult yet fully comprehended. Maya's small hand rested on the dog's head, steadying him, whispering softly. "It's okay, just tell the truth," she murmured. Officer Wells swallowed, glancing nervously at the man in gloves who had quietly stepped toward the center of the courtroom. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but now shadowed with a hint of doubt. For the first time, the man seemed aware that the game he had orchestrated was slipping from his control. Judge Ramirez leaned forward in her chair, voice firm. "Step forward. Identify yourself. Explain your involvement, and tell us why you attempted to manipulate evidence." The man's gloves creaked as he clenched his hands. I only sought to prove my own theory. I never meant harm. I merely directed the dog to confirm what I suspected." A juror whispered, "Directed the dog." "Yes," the man admitted, voice low. "Atlas was brilliant, but I needed him to follow my instructions, to mislead the court for just a moment. Maya's small finger shot toward him. "He lied. He told Atlas the wrong way." Every eye in the courtroom shifted to the child. Even the most skeptical reporter felt their breath catch. Atlas whined softly, pressing closer to her. Wells' face drained of color. The defense attorney rose, voice trembling but sharp. "Your Honor, this proves deliberate tampering. The man orchestrated Atlas's tracking. The video, the photographs, the USB evidence, it all shows manipulation. My client is innocent." The man's eyes darted to Atlas, then to Maya. I didn't anticipate," his voice faltered. The dog's unwavering gaze and the child's finger had unraveled his control. Judge Ramirez's gavel hovered, poised for command. She turned her piercing gaze to Wells. "Officer, is this true?" Wells' voice shook. "Yes, Your Honor, I was coerced. I followed instructions, but Atlas hesitated. He didn't want to. The dog chose truth over orders." Atlas lifted his head slightly, ears alert, eyes bright, almost proud. Maya whispered softly, "He's scared, Atlas knows." The man in gloves' shoulders slumped. His composure cracked. "It was supposed to be controlled. I didn't know a child would see it, or that the dog would disobey." Every adult in the courtroom felt the tension snap. Even the jurors leaned in closer, murmuring, struggling to comprehend the audacity and innocence intertwined in the scene before them. The prosecutor's face had turned ashen. His confident words, once unshakable, were now hollow. This undermines every testimony, every piece of K-9 evidence. The dog, he didn't follow protocol, Judge Ramirez held up her hand. "Silence! We will examine the evidence carefully, but the court is hearing a confession. Atlas's tracking was influenced. The dog's hesitation, the child's observations, the video, the photographs, and the USB evidence all point to manipulation." Maya's finger remained firmly pointed at the man. "He told Atlas the wrong way. He wanted to trick everyone." Atlas let out a low growl, pressing his muzzle against Maya's small hand, almost in agreement. Wells exhaled shakily, realizing the full weight of what had occurred. The dog's loyalty to truth had exposed everything. The man in gloves finally lowered his head. I admit it. I attempted to manipulate Atlas to confirm my suspicions. But the child, she saw, the dog, he refused. I cannot lie anymore." The courtroom erupted into whispers, disbelief, and tension. Every juror shifted, some leaning forward in shock, others pressing their palms to their foreheads. Caleb's hands shook, trembling with relief and disbelief. Judge Ramirez tapped her gavel. "All right, everyone calm down. Bailiffs, secure the man. Officer Wells, remain seated. The evidence will now be examined in detail. Atlas's actions and Maya's testimony are central to understanding the truth. Do not leave your posts." The man in gloves was escorted to a chair near the rear of the courtroom, still under guard. Atlas remained by Maya's side, muscles coiled but obedient, a living testament to instinct and loyalty. The deputy handed the judge the last envelope. Inside were timestamps, location data, and photographs corroborating everything Maya had observed. Atlas had been guided incorrectly. Each movement of the dog, each hesitation, each look toward Maya, now validated in black and white evidence, confirmed that the manipulation was deliberate. The jurors' eyes widened as they reviewed the images. Caleb's hands unclenched slightly, relief beginning to wash over him. The defense attorney smiled faintly, though exhausted by the emotional roller coaster. Maya whispered to Atlas, voice soft and sure, "We told the truth. We did it right." The dog pressed his head against her, tail thumping slightly in a subtle, satisfied motion. The tension in the room did not vanish completely. The storm outside still raged, but the scales of truth had shifted irreversibly. Judge Ramirez looked at everyone in the courtroom, her eyes sharp, unwavering. "This court recognizes that the K-9 evidence has been compromised. The manipulation has been documented, and the child's observations, coupled with the dog's behavior, are crucial to understanding the integrity of this trial. The man in gloves, shoulders slumped, avoided every gaze. Atlas whined softly, a low, alert sound that seemed almost like a warning. Even though the truth was revealed, danger had not fully passed. Maya whispered one final phrase that sent a shiver through everyone. "He won't stop, not yet." The courtroom fell silent. Every adult understood. The storm outside was mirrored inside. Justice was within reach, but one final twist, one final move could still shatter the fragile order. And everyone, the jurors, Caleb, Officer Wells, the prosecution, the defense, Judge Ramirez, and even Atlas waited, breath caught in their throats, for the final part of the truth to unfold. The storm outside finally seemed to pause, a brief hush falling over the city as if holding its breath along with the courtroom. Inside, the tension had not yet eased. Every person present knew the trial had reached its pivotal moment. Judge Ramirez leaned forward, hands gripping the bench. Her gaze swept over the jurors, then to Caleb, Atlas, Maya, and finally the man in gloves, who now sat silently, shoulders slumped, every carefully constructed facade stripped away. "This court has reviewed all evidence," she began, voice measured, deliberate. "The K-9 testimony, once considered infallible, has been compromised. Manipulation has been documented. The child's observations and the dog's reactions are not only credible but crucial in establishing the truth." Atlas shifted slightly beside Maya, who stroked his head gently. The dog's ears flicked, tail low but still vibrating with tension. Even he seemed aware that justice was teetering on the edge, ready to tip in favor of honesty and innocence. The judge continued. "Officer Wells has admitted coercion and manipulation, but crucially, Atlas's instinct and loyalty to truth prevented further deception. The court recognizes the bravery of a 3-year-old witness and her ability to perceive facts that adults overlooked." Maya's small hand clutched her mother's sleeve. Her wide eyes scanned the courtroom, still fixed on Atlas, her voice barely audible. "We did it right. We told the truth." The courtroom remained silent, the weight of the moment pressing on everyone. The man in gloves finally raised his head, his expression fractured. I underestimated them. The child, the dog, the truth, I failed." Caleb's defense attorney stood, voice trembling with a mixture of triumph and relief. "Your Honor, this confirms beyond doubt that my client's arrest was based on tainted evidence. Caleb Harris is innocent." The jurors exchanged looks, whispering quietly among themselves. The weight of months of deliberation, hours of testimony, and the chaos of manipulated evidence now hung in balance. Judge Ramirez's gavel rose. "Let it be recorded that Caleb Harris is hereby found not guilty of all charges. The evidence against him has been deemed unreliable due to manipulation and coercion. Justice has prevailed." A ripple of relief washed over the courtroom. Caleb slumped, tears welling in his eyes. He turned slowly to Lena and Maya. "Thank you," he whispered, voice thick. I don't know what I would have done without you two." Maya's eyes shone. "Atlas helped," she said softly. Atlas wagged his tail slightly, pressing his head into her lap, as if acknowledging her words. The dog had not only saved Caleb, but had followed his instincts, guided by loyalty and truth, a silent hero in fur and courage. Officer Wells exhaled shakily, the weight of guilt and relief combining. I should have trusted Atlas," he admitted quietly, almost to himself. "I didn't, but he knew." The man in gloves, now in custody, was led away silently. His carefully constructed manipulations had been undone by the smallest voice and the keenest instincts in the room. Even he seemed almost humbled by the enormity of their combined courage. Outside, the rain began to lighten, a gentle patter replacing the earlier pounding storm. Sunlight peeked briefly through the clouds, catching the courthouse steps in a moment of brilliance, a subtle reflection of the truth now revealed. Caleb knelt beside Maya, holding her tiny hands. "You saved me," he said, voice trembling. "You really saved me." Maya looked up, eyes wide yet serious, as if the weight of her words carried more than her age suggested. "Atlas knew," she whispered. "He knew the truth. I just saw it too." The courtroom emptied slowly, whispers of amazement following everyone. Reporters captured the scene, though no words could fully convey the intensity of what had unfolded. A 3-year-old child and a loyal police dog exposing corruption, manipulation, and the power of truth. Judge Ramirez remained behind briefly, watching Atlas settle beside Maya. Even she allowed a faint smile. The dog had done more than obey commands. He had discerned loyalty, recognized manipulation, and aligned himself with innocence. Caleb stood hugging his family, tears streaming freely. The courthouse steps now glistened in the rainlight. Atlas remained by Maya, tail wagging gently, ears alert, eyes bright and intelligent, a living testament to courage and intuition. Maya whispered to her mother as they walked out together, "He listened to the truth, not the man." Lena hugged her tightly. "Yes, baby, you both did the right thing. The right thing always comes out." The tall man's manipulations had been undone, justice restored. Caleb was free. Atlas had saved a life, guided not by orders but by instinct. And Maya, a 3-year-old with wide eyes and extraordinary perception, had changed everything with nothing more than her voice and courage. The courthouse steps were quiet now, the storm fading, the world holding its breath for a moment longer. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled softly, a reminder that while storms pass, truth endures. The child looked down at Atlas, whispering one final phrase, "We did it together." Atlas rested his head against her lap, eyes closing briefly, tail thumping softly. The silent hero of a courtroom that would never forget the day a 3-year-old and a police dog stopped a trial and revealed the unshakable power of truth. Justice had been served, and the world, for one brief, perfect moment, held its breath in awe of courage in its purest form.